You're listening to The Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things with Lyndia Grant.
We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created
Well, thank you for tuning in to the fifth podcast of the Lyndia Grant Show. We are so pleased. One of my mentors, the one and only Dr. Charlene Jarvis, and I won't go back into how long I've known her. It's been, I can say 40 plus years. I do know
Absolutely.
that. I was a girl in my late 30s when I first met her. And so I just want to know that I'm so thankful that she has agreed to talk to me today about her new book. And it is called Genius Unbroken. So, about her dad in the middle of Black History Month. And it is so perfect to have her here. So, I first want to just say hello to you, Dr. Jarvis, and welcome you to the show.
Lindy, I'm delighted to be here with you. We do have a very long history, starting with the Georgia Avenue Day.
Exactly. Yes, indeed. As a matter of fact, Dr. Jarvis, you met me when I was unveiling the bronze bust of Jesse Jackson. And you decided that day that you needed me because our office was in your ward. That's how it all got started.
Correct. You have a good memory.
So we're going to talk about this book today in Black History Month. And the first question I have is the father versus the scientist. Most people know your father, Dr. Charles Drew, as the father of the blood bank, but you knew him simply as dad. What is one personal memory of him that you felt was essential to include in this biography to show the man behind the medicine?
That's a great question. And let me just also tell you and the audience that this is a book with which I collaborated with Dr. Craig Miller. Dr. Craig Miller is a cardiac surgeon. He got interested in the life of Dr. Drew. He called me and said he would really like to write. And I said, I intended to write. I have all of this material. So let's see if we can collaborate here so I can share much of what I have and you can help make sure that the writing is cogent and easy to understand. He had written books before, so I want to do a shout out for Dr. Miller. So your question is, what about the father and the scientist?
Yes.
Okay. I need to tell your audience that Dr. Drew died in 1950. That was when I was 8 years old. There are four Drew children. The first one is Bibi, who was named by the nurses at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital for blood bank. And she's called Bibi. I'm named for Charles and Lenore, my mother, and my father. My other sister is Rhea Sylvia. My father named her because he liked Greek and Roman history, and it was Charles R. Drew Jr. So there were four of us. We've lost Charlie, unfortunately. My dad was a strict disciplinarian, and he made sure that we were walking in the straight and narrow, and that we were being raised along with my mom with the proper approach to the world, and that in the home we were doing as we were supposed to be doing. So I do remember we lived on College Street on Howard University campus. We had 3 floors. I was coming downstairs from the 3rd floor, and my father walked by and he said, "Good morning." And I did not respond to him. I cannot remember why I did not
respond. I was getting ready to ask you that question, Dr. J.
I did not remember why I didn't respond to him. And so he said, "Well, just sit there until you think you want to respond to me, and I'll come back." So he wanted behavior to be on the straight and narrow. I remember being outside without my shoes. I was not to be outside without my shoes, and I cut my foot very badly.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother put me in a little red wagon, wrapped my foot, and I saw my father coming down the street because we lived near the hospital, Friedman's Hospital. I saw him coming down the street with his tie and his coat, waving in the back, and I thought, oh my goodness, if I could just stop the bleeding.
You don't want him to catch that.
No, no. But he was kind.
I was getting
And
ready to
he
say
was a
because
teacher.
you were injured and he couldn't be
Yeah.
mean to you at
No,
that
no,
moment.
no, 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 no. He was kind and he was a teacher, always a teacher.
Mm-hmm. Good. All right. Well, I like that story. His life's motto. Your father often said, and I've heard you say this on my show before, quote, excellence of performance will overcome any artificial barriers created by men.
Yes.
How did you see him live out that motto in his daily life and work?
Excellence of performance was the motto by which he lived.
Mm-hmm.
Whether he was on the football field because he was an outstanding athlete, whether he was in the classroom. I must say, when he was at Dunbar High School, he got so interested in sports that he might have had some excellent performance there, but he was admitted to Amherst College and went on to McGill University. And he was third in his class from the medical school at McGill. So
Mm-hmm.
he believed and he said to his residents that excellence of performance will overcome any artificial barriers. So do not fall back into you are limited because of your color, because of your race, because you're a woman, because you've come from Africa, because you speak Spanish. In other words, his perspective, his rule was um, excellence of performance will overcome any of those barriers.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I remember when you said it before, I thought this is so much this is such a great thing to remember because excellence of performance is something that my mom always said. She just didn't
Yes,
say it in that way.
yes,
And you knew my mother.
I
And
did.
so my mother would tell us, to me, it's similar. Be the best at whatever it is you do.
Yes,
Always. She said, I don't
yes,
care if it's cleaning the bathroom, whatever it is you're doing,
yes,
always do it as if you had supervision and that you cared about what it is. So I love that. Excellence of performance
yep,
will overcome any artificial barrier created
yes,
by men. So I love that.
yes.
All right. So the next question I have is on his legacy and impact, a life-saving innovation. Can you explain in simple terms how your father's work with blood plasma changed the world during World War II and how it saves lives even today?
Yes, Lydia, thank you. My father's research, my father had an MD degree from McGill, and then he went to Columbia University, where he earned a PhD called Doctor of Science
Mhm.
um, and in a field that he was studying, which was blood storage. And what Dr. Drew discovered was that you could remove the yellow plasma from red blood, and that plasma could be preserved instead of whole red blood,
Mhm.
so that we can't take blood to the battlefield.
Right. Mhm.
And so there needed to be a way that you could transfer blood saving plasma to the battlefield once it was removed and dried. Uh, and after that process, then at the battlefield, what you're looking at is dried plasma. Then the fluid, water, can be added to the plasma, and that plasma it can be transferred to the patient.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so there were critical um, there were critical points of combat in the Second World War at El Alamein, for example, where the German and the British were fighting. Now, this is Second World War, so we're talking about a contest between the Germans and the British. The British soldiers at El Alamein had plasma. The German soldiers at El Alamein did not have plasma. The British soldiers were able for the first time to overcome the German army because of the presence of plasma that their soldiers were able to have in the heat of war. So it really made the difference between life and death in the Second World War. And that's why when I began to read about my dad, I kept on reading about Blood for Britain, because he was asked to lead the Blood for Britain project during the Second World War.
I love that, because it made a difference in helping them win. Because
it did.
Yes.
It helped them win the Second World War against the Germans.
Yes. Next is champion for civil rights. Beyond the lab, your father was a fierce advocate for equal health care. What was his biggest frustration with the medical systems of his time, such as the American Red Cross and its blood segregation policies?
My father took great issue with the segregation of blood. The segregation of blood was really promoted by the military, and the Red Cross was following the military's dictates. And my father said there is no reason to segregate blood on the basis of race. It is the same for all of us. Blood is separated by blood type. You can be A or B or O, but it is blood for humans is the same whether you're in Germany, whether you're Black, whether you're Scandinavian. And he argued vociferously against the segregation of blood. And very fortunately, there were two people who were African Americans who were in the War Department at very high levels. James Evans was one of those people, and Bill Hasty was another one of those people. And so they worked in tandem, this trio, to make sure that the military would change the policy with respect to the segregation of blood.
Wow, it was so good. It reminds me a little bit of today, things that happen today.
Yes.
It's like, oh my gosh, when are we ever going to let this go? So,
well, the current furor about this president and his postings indicates to us that people still hold on to these notions. And I think, honestly, there's a lesson to be learned from this.
I do
right?
Too.
There's a lesson to be learned to teach people that you're not looking back at people of color and their origin any differently than you're going to look
later. That's right.
That's right.
Way
any
back.
Differently that you are going to look at the other people. They simply come from a different part of the country, although Africa seems to be the place where we actually started. All of us.
Yes, indeed. That's right. All of us. On the writing process, collaborative research, this is considered the first comprehensive biography of your father. What was it like working with a surgeon like Dr. Craig Miller to piece together both the medical history and your family's private records?
It was really a pleasure to work with Dr. Miller. As I said, I had saved a lot of material up here on my third floor and had every intention of writing the book myself. But I continued to take on responsibilities myself until I got to be a ripe old age. And I said, I'm not sure how I can do this. I have all of this material, and I got this call from Dr. Miller. I had not known Dr. Miller.
It was a blessing, wasn't it? It was your blessing.
It was an absolute blessing. Now, Dr. Miller had just written a very large book about Dr. Michael DeBakey. Dr. DeBakey is the heart surgeon who is well known internationally. And so he got Dr. Miller got interested in Dr. Drew's life.
Mm-hmm.
And he called and said, I'd like to work with you on that. We met. I understood the excellence of his thinking about this and his the research he'd already done. So I said, yes, this is a collaboration that I welcome.
Wow.
And so we together, I made a lot of information available, a lot of pictures available. He did a lot of writing. I did a lot of reviewing, but he's a wonderful writer. And the book occurred in a very short period of time.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Georgetown Press. And I had begun to think about if I write a book, where would I get it published?
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking with Hugh Price, who used to be the head of the Urban League.
Mm-hmm.
Hugh Price was not only on the Georgetown board, but he had written a number of books himself. So
Mm-hmm.
when I called, and he happens to be married to my sister. So I called Hugh and I asked him, he said, go to Georgetown Press. So that's where I went. And they took the book and short order, we had a book that was available for publication.
And it's really been doing well. I've been seeing all over Facebook. You had, when I talked to you that Saturday, you were going to a huge book signing at Industrial Bank, and you've been just busy going to these book signings.
Yes, it's been great. Well, my son did really the first book signing down at the O Street Mansion.
Uh-huh.
And, my son is in the 60-something group, so he had invited a lot
Oh,
of the 60-somethings. And
uh-huh.
it was a grand event. And what made it so good is that it was my son who did it, and the
Mm-hmm.
pride that he had
Yeah.
in being able to do it, the pride that my grandsons had in being one was present, the other's in California working, but they are both very proud
Yeah.
to be a part of it.
And that's the question I wanted to ask, because I want to share this historical video with lots of folks, but I want the Gen Zs and the millennials to understand, help them understand, especially since you've already done a book signing with them. Tell them something that they need to know about your dad.
Well, I think, first of all, Lyndia, we just said what was really important, that excellence of performance will
Yes.
overcome any artificial barriers created by man. And if I'm talking to young people, I want
Mm-hmm.
to repeat that
Mm-hmm.
because excellence of performance has to guide them. And very importantly, one of my grandsons, Jake, said after the end of the event, he said, I'm going to have excellence of performance. I'm going to make my work count for something. So he already had heard that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's up to you. You have to say to young people, you have to be the one that lets excellence of performance guide you.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be the one that cares about how hard you work, how well you work, how collaboratively you work, and whether you are asking good questions about your own progress. How is your excellence of performance being measured in your own perspective? But
Mm-hmm.
how's it being measured by the people who are around you, who are responsible for evaluating your
Mm-hmm.
performance? Right? So people who take a motto, excellence of performance will overcome any barriers created by men, will find themselves stepping up to the top.
Yes,
They will
that's
find that they take the next step, and they find that they will take the next step
mm-hmm.
because they have lived by a motto which guides their behavior.
Amen. Amen. Next question I want to ask Dr. Jarvis. I had a call because I was telling someone yesterday, trying to do some schedule, and I said I was interviewing Dr. Charlene Drew Jarvis, the daughter of Dr. Charles Drew, and they both got excited. They live in Detroit. They're excited and want a copy of the show. And then the lady called back to say that the minister lady that she was talking to, the pastor, just told her something very interesting. She said, I don't know if you've heard this, but Dr. Drew was a victim of, and I already know what you're going to say because you
Mhm.
said it on my show before. he was a victim of not being able to be served when he was injured.
Yeah.
And I know that rumor is out there because you talked about it. Help clear that up, please.
Yes, there is a rumor, and it's held by very many people that my dad was denied
Yes.
blood
Mm-hmm.
after a very serious injury, and that that the irony of it struck people that he would have been denied the very lifeblood that he had made available to other people. But in fact, that is not true.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Drew was seriously injured. And let me step back for a minute. Dr. Drew was absolutely devoted to the residents at Howard University Hospital. The residents, and my dad wanted the residents to go south to a medical meeting, and some of them did not have train fare. So my dad said, "We'll drive." And so, in fact, there was my dad and three others, residents, um, and one I think had already finished the residency, who were driving south at night, all night. So let's just now consider driving south 1950. Where are the hotels and motels that are available for people of color? Not available.
Mm-hmm.
Why were they driving all night? Because those places you could put your head were not available to them going south on the highway where they were going. So they kept driving. My father took the turn to drive, apparently very early in the morning, about 5 o'clock in the morning, and he fell asleep at the wheel. He was in such a position that he was thrown from the car, and he was seriously injured. He was taken to the Alamance General Hospital in North Carolina. There were two surgeons there, white surgeons. Their names were Kernodle, Kernodle. They knew Dr. Drew. They treated him in the regular operating theater in that hospital. And they tried the best they could to save him. But you're talking about now a man who was essentially crushed by a car, which rolled left onto him. He was the driver.
Mm-hmm.
So it is A, not true that he was denied blood. It is B, true that he was treated by two surgeons, two brothers who were surgeons. My mother had confirmed that. There is a letter which indicates that my mother wrote to them. And of course, we didn't email.
Right. It didn't exist back then.
It didn't exist back then. And my mother had a letter from them assuring her that he was treated and he was badly injured. But the other important thing was A, his own residents were with him, and B, there was a Dr. Quick, a physician who was trained at Howard, who was in the community, found out about Dr. Drew and went to the hospital. He
Mm-hmm.
could affirm that Dr. Drew's injuries were so severe that there was nothing that anyone could have done to save his life.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the tragedy of his life, but it's also a way that he lived.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted his students to be there. His students couldn't afford to take the train.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was facilitating getting his students to that medical convention.
But it was also because of racism in America. Because if they had been able to stop and get some rest,
correct,
that would not have been able to. They would have
so
all been okay.
And that's the story.
That is racism in America. Yes, indeed.
That is the story. And I have never wanted to disabuse the South from its calumny, from its segregated facilities, from its less than adequate facilities for people of color. So I've never want to excuse the South. It simply happened that on this occasion, they were treated by two surgeons who knew him and treated him, and they were also with their own he was also with his own residents and
Mm-hmm.
with doctors in the neighborhood who could affirm that he lost his life because he was so severely injured.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that is so good. That's why I wanted to make sure we got this story told today. Uh, I am so thankful that you were able to talk about this today, Dr. Charlene Jarvis, because I'm so sad. I had heard that even before you came on my radio show when you talked about it once to me. I had heard it, and it's a very famous story. And I wonder how you had said how it got out there. It was seems like a mix up from something that happened to someone else.
Yes.
Tell us
Um,
about that.
yes. There's a book that was written by a person called Spencie, Spencie Love.
Mm-hmm.
It's called One Blood. And what Spencie discovered was that on that same highway, at virtually the same time, there was an African American man who was injured, severely injured. He was taken to the nearest hospital and he was refused treatment. He died as a result of being refused treatment. And so that story, Spencie Love had went back and did a little bit of research. She believes that the story about and he was a soldier, Malthus, his name was, that story about his loss of life was confused with the story about my dad because my dad had a terrible accident on the same highway.
Mm-hmm.
And so she wrote a whole book about it. It's called One Blood by Spencie Love.
Mm-hmm. That's good. I wanted to get that point in too, because you see, I remember when you talked about it on my
Yeah,
show before, so I'm glad
yeah,
I did about the mix
yeah.
up. Well, Dr. Jarvis, let's go back now and talk about things maybe he had to go through when he went to the war, about how to package it. It was some things that had to be done in order to get the blood plasma from the United States to where the war was.
To Britain, right,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
right. And so, of course, the plasma is extracted from the whole red blood.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's a process where the plasma can be dried. And so there are, I guess, packets of plasma that are made available on the battlefield to injured soldiers, administered by the Red Cross or other military in medicine. And the plasma is reconstituted
Mm-hmm.
so that now you've got the liquid plasma again, which is injected, and it's like getting whole red blood.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And that was what was saving lives. You remember that prior to this, um, there were blood transfusions that required you to be at a red, not at a Red Cross, because Red Cross hadn't been fully developed yet. It required you to be lying on a table next to someone,
Yes.
and the blood was being transferred um, from that person to you
Mm-hmm.
physically.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had to go somewhere in order to have that happen. The advantage of plasma was that it was simply a dried blood substance which could be reconstituted and it could be sent to the battlefield. And that was the life saving part of what his discovery was.
And has it improved or changed, or is it basically still the same even these many years later?
You know, I don't think I'm the one who can answer that question very well. I would have to go and talk to folks at the Red Cross now about whether or
Oh,
not
okay.
they have improved the way of transporting, or go
Mm-hmm.
to folks in the military and ask if they have improved the way of transporting.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very good question because we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about my father's work in 1950.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And actually, you've asked a question that I might try to find the answer to, which is, what do you do now? How do you do?
Yeah.
Is it the same?
Yes.
Is it the
What's the,
same process that he developed?
yeah.
Um, I remember talking to, um, I went to meet with some folks at the American Medical Association very recently.
Mm-hmm.
American Medical Association was in my father's line of sight for a long time because the chapters of the AMA in the South and many of the other chapters would not admit African American physicians. And my father railed against that because he would not admit them, which means they could not be in hospitals unless they were admitted to the chapters of the AMA, which
Mm-hmm.
severely restricted the development of African American physicians. And my father railed against it. I found letters. Um, and he joined with the NAACP. This is where he got into kind of civil rights on this issue
Mm-hmm.
to assail the AMA for not doing that. And honestly, they did not fully apologize for having denied African American physicians the right to practice at at hospitals all over the country,
Mm-hmm.
which could have improved their abilities. And it was very late that happened. I did talk to a person who represented the AMA very recently, like a couple of years ago, and he said, your father didn't just make a discovery. He said he created a discipline,
Mm-hmm.
and I had not heard it described in that way. He
Mm-hmm.
created a discipline in which the control of the transfer of blood to plasma, and the refrigeration of whole red blood,
Mm-hmm.
right, um, could be and should be treated. He said he really it was more than a discovery. It was a discipline.
Uh-huh. And that reminds me, I'm thinking of questions I've heard you talk about. The way that he handled his students. There was something you told us on my show about what is like he was with you all at home. He was
Yes,
similar with his students at Howard. Tell us about that, how he handled his students.
yes. Well, he had very high expectations of his students, and they understood that they were to perform. And I remember that I saw the writings of Dr. Jack White, who was a former resident under Dr. Drew, and, and he said that he was sure the residents were sure that Dr. Drew had a red light over his bed when they made a mistake, and that he was jumping out of his bed to come over and find out what it was that they had done that they shouldn't have. So he was very explicit about their training, very, very explicit.
They could feel his presence even when he wasn't there.
Absolutely. They said they thought he had a red light over his bed and it would go off when they made a mistake.
And that was good. That meant
Yes.
he was inside of their brain. That was
Yes,
really
yes.
wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Reminds me of when he spoke to you and you didn't speak.
That yes.
He came back to you about that. I remember, I think, I don't know if you remember today, but there was something about when they were taking exams, how he wanted them to have perfect scores and uh, make sure they did their very best when they took their test.
Oh yes, because when you finish medicine, if you have a specialty, you have to take your boards. You have to
Mm-hmm.
take your surgery boards.
Mm-hmm.
And so it isn't just a question of going through the 2 years of medical school and learning, and then going the next 2 years and having some practicum. It wasn't just going through the internship. You had to do all of these things in order to really practice medicine. And he wanted his students to be exemplary at each one of those steps
That's
uh,
right. Mhm.
in medicine.
I remember that. And I'm sure that those who graduated under him, just, those who are still around,
Yeah. They lionized him. He was when I read about how they felt about him, it just
yeah
they loved him.
yeah
And they didn't fear him, but they knew that he had expectations of them, and they wanted to meet those expectations.
mm-hmm.
Beside excuse me, beside his back,
Mm-hmm.
they called him Big Red.
Uh-huh.
They called him Big Red because if he got angry,
He would turn red.
he would turn red. And so they didn't want Big Red to turn angry. They didn't want that.
It reminds me of Dr. Jarvis back when I had my company and you helped us to get a contract with the Department of Employment Services and you came to the graduation.
Right.
But I don't know if you remember how wonderful our students were and how they remembered the poems. And, it was just such a wonderful graduation because I remember Johnny Barnes was saying some poems and the students knew the poems that he was saying in his speech. So I was thinking about that exemplary that your dad taught because the whole time I was teaching the students from Department of Employment Services, I knew that they had to go out into the world and be their very best. And so I just want to say that quote of his means a lot to me.
Ah, that's very good. Well, Dr. Drew himself as a student was exemplary too. In fact, when he had to go take some surgical boards, and it was about a certain subject. I think it was about shock.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he and they began to ask him questions because now he's taking the test, and he was doing that verbally, and there were a group of people who were questioning him because he had to go to the next level in surgery. And they stopped him and they said, Dr. Drew, just hold a minute. We want the rest of the team to come, and we want you to continue to teach them about shock,
Mm-hmm.
and about recovery from shock. And that was so ironic because that's what happened to my dad. He went into shock
Mm-hmm.
after his accident.
His
Right?
accident. Mm-hmm.
So they were not only dealing with somebody who had tremendous injuries, but they were also dealing with a person who was in shock. And there's certain kinds of treatments that you apply to people who are in shock from injury.
Mm-hmm.
And he apparently was so good at understanding that,
mm-hmm.
that the people who were questioning him stopped him and said, we want to bring the rest of the team in here to hear you.
Mm-hmm.
And would that he had lived long enough that he was able to teach the people around him anything that he might have known that might have saved his life. It's just a cruel irony.
Oh, it was so good. Well, Dr. J, why don't you wrap up and tell us now a conclusion, anything you think. I'm hoping that I can get Mayor Sharon Pratt to get a copy of this and keep it over there at UDC. Yeah. She loves me too, so I believe she will.
That's true.
I know she's your buddy.
Yes,
but
she
this is a very important podcast, and I wanted to have historical value and make sure you could talk a little bit about what your family was like a little more. I remember going to your mom's funeral. Of course, I was born 51, so Dr. Drew, he was gone already, I think, wasn't it? He died in
1950, April of 1950.
So it's nothing I can say. I did meet your mom, but not your dad at all.
Yeah, but my mom was a saint.
Yes, I remember.
My mother raised 4 children to excellence, and she herself was well educated. She had 2 master's degrees when my father and she met, and she told a story that's kind of funny. Dr. Drew got to be, I don't know, about 35 or 36, and he decided he needed to be married. And my mother said, I'm not sure it's a wife. No, he said, I need to have a family. And my mother said, I'm not sure it's a wife you need.
She was messing with him, wasn't she?
Yes, she was a saint.
But it was good. She was a sweetheart. And I think the funeral was at All Souls on 16th Street.
No, it would have been, that was her church. That was where
Oh,
she
that
was
was,
buried.
oh, okay.
He was at Howard University
He
Chapel.
was. Okay, yeah, but I mean her funeral was at All
Yes, at
Souls.
All Souls Church. Yes.
I was right there. I really
Yes.
was.
Yes. Thank
Tell
you.
tell the listeners now anything you want to tell them from a historical perspective, because I'm planning on getting this in the library. Things that you want to say in your conclusion about Genius Unbroken.
Well, first of all, Lydia, thank you so much about having this. I'm delighted to see you again. I should know that you're still in the business of
Yeah.
educating,
Yes.
and interviewing and broadening the perspective of not only yourself, but of people who listen to you. So thank you very much for that.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to me that folks know about Dr. Drew, that it is well written in the book, Unbroken Genius, that it was fortunate that there was someone who came and absorbed all of the material that I had about him. So the first thing I want to say is preserve what's in your family.
Yeah.
It's very important. You think that the things that grandma had or granddad had, um, um, you don't know what to do with them. Well, my advice to you is save everything that is historic in your family, not only for your own family, but there's history in there.
Yeah.
It's what life was like, what the world was like, what African Americans were like. So save your history and share your
Yeah.
history to the extent that you can.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also important, Dr. Drew's life is important because he urged each of us to be excellent, to
Yeah.
reach high, to perform well, to always know that that kind of excellence is going to come back to you in the career path that you choose. But it's also going to be something that gets shared with everyone. And even if it's not particular scientific information, if people are around you and they understand that your drive is to be the best that you can be, if they know that their friends are not, that friends like that are not going to tolerate their wasting their talents,
Mm-hmm.
when what they have is what they don't understand yet. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, put it to work, put the brain to work,
That's right.
and help the brain to figure out what it is it can do to make you that most excellent, the best person that you can be. And it's a question of nurturing. That's another thing that I would say to parents. Children need to be taught from the very beginning. The brain, I'm a neuroscientist.
I was
The
going to go there and ask if you finished that, but tell them how you were working at NIH and what persuaded you to switch to the city council after you finished your point.
Right. Well, so I think that you ought to encourage people to be the best like your mother did. My dad said, excellence of performance is
Mm-hmm.
not only for you, it is for the people around you who understand that you have some pride in what you can do.
Yeah.
Um, okay, you went to something else. Remind me.
When you were a neuroscientist
Oh,
at
yes.
NIH and you had not planned on being a politician. Tell us about
Right,
that. How that
right.
switched.
Indeed, because I was NIH and I was doing basic research on the brain. So
Mm-hmm.
my dad had done basic research on blood, and I decided I would do basic research on the brain. And I'd been there for almost 10 years when Martin Luther King was assassinated. And I said to myself, maybe I should be doing, my science is something that has a long life. It takes a long time. But it looks like maybe my talents and my drive and my energy and my commitment could be spent in another way. And so after Dr. King's death, I said, I want to help rebuild the city. And so I ran for city council. And I had the good fortune, because the chairman of the council was Arrington Dixon, I had the good fortune of being appointed to the Economic Development Committee.
That's right. That's the one that helped rebuild it too. And I'm so glad.
Yes. And the Economic Development Committee helped me in many ways, because then I could focus on the issue of how do we rebuild in those neighborhood commercial corridors, the community development corporations, the use of community development money. I also had oversight for banks. And so banks who wanted to merge with other banks in the District of Columbia would come to my committee. And I would say to him, I'm perfectly willing to propose your bank, merge with this bank, but I would like to have a number of things at the same time. I would like to have more women and minorities on your board. I would like to have more investment in our neighborhood commercial corridors, which are still recovering. 8th Street was still recovering. U Street was recovering. Georgia Avenue was recovering. And
7th Street.
Yes.
14th Street.
Right. So I said, let's do a community reinvestment plan, banker.
Yeah.
And what that does is it said that you're making commitments to help in those communities, to rebuild in those communities.
And even Georgia Avenue Day's theme was a tree about growth. It was a logo that was a tree.
Right.
And it was about growth of the longest commercial minority small business commercial corridor in the city.
Yeah.
Over 7 miles, Georgia Avenue.
And Lyndia, you remember that's where you and Jackie and all of your family.
Yes.
We were so involved in the Georgia Avenue Day events over the years.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I felt that I was doing what I should be and could be doing to help, recover.
Well, you did. You did.
Yeah.
Because we found out, Dr. Jarvis, when we were doing Georgia Avenue Day, although it was a parade coming and a festival and a dinner and rides, people would clean up even more out front. I started to feel so much pride. Yeah. They were washing windows all up and down the court. It's Georgia Avenue Day. It's Georgia Avenue Day. Yeah. They would put up tents out front, and they would have places for people to come and eat. It really was a huge event for people along Georgia Avenue.
And you remember that we attracted Bill Clinton to Georgia Avenue?
Yes, we did.
Bill Clinton was president then. And he walked Georgia Avenue with us.
All right. And so did Jesse Jackson. I remember.
Yep.
So we did it for 15 years, and that was because you saw us unveil the bronze bus. And I said, well, Councilmember, you wanted us to come meet with you. I said, but we never did anything like that before. I was trying to tell you no, but you wouldn't accept it. You said, based on what you saw, we can. You were using your father's exemplary, because obviously you had seen enough.
Yep. And you're right. I mean, you and your family, the energy, the focus. I saw that. Yes, I said, that's who I need.
They're in my ward.
That's right. I said, that's who I need. And it started a wonderful relationship.
Yes, it did.
And Jackie, your sister, even came and worked in my office.
Exactly. I was going to bring that up. Your schedule. You said you had the best schedule in the world.
Absolutely. She was my scheduler. Yeah. She was just her. I'm telling you, somebody in that family raised those children.
My mother and father.
Yes, indeed.
All 9 of us. They kept it going for us. Yes, they did.
You have an extraordinary family.
Thank you.
You really have an extraordinary family.
Thank you so much. Well, I appreciate you for doing this. I know I called you a lot, and I'm so grateful that you said yes, because you're a very busy lady and a lot going still, even at age. And I remember Jackie used to tell me sometimes they didn't even want to have the council meetings when you couldn't come. I know a lot of people may not know that, but I know it.
I didn't know that.
Phyllis would call Jackie to find out you could be there.
Oh, my goodness.
You studied the brain, but you were very bright, and they didn't want council meetings when you couldn't be there, Dr. Jarvis.
Well, I've never heard that story.
I heard it.
and you know what? Because you tell me, I believe it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jackie was doing the schedule. They would call her and get the date.
Yeah.
She'll see this tape and she'll know it's been so long ago. They can't get mad about it. It's okay. They know you were one of the best down there, so it's okay.
Well, I'm glad you think it, but I'm grateful for your call. I'm always delighted to talk about my dad. I will tell you, when I've finished reading the draft of that book, I hadn't cried in a long, long time.
Wow, that was a big day, wasn't it?
Yes, it really was, because you realize the talent, and it's gone. Then it's gone.
Mm-hmm. But that's okay. You've got it now documented in this book.
Yep.
And I read it may be already a bestseller, but it's getting close because it's going really fast. It's moving along quickly, and I'm going to be putting this podcast out to help.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I'm going to get everybody to promote it, get it out there. So we thank you so much for being our guest today.
Lyndia, it's been delightful. You know, I love you, and it's been a long time.
I love you too.
But
yes,
I'm delighted that we've come together in this way.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much. All right, you've been listening to the Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things. Dr. Charlene Jarvis in the middle of Black History Month. This tape is going to be for my radio show. We're going to pick the part we want for the radio show with Dr. Julianne Malvo for this Friday. But then when you want to hear the rest, you got to go to the YouTube channel, Think on These Things, and click the podcast, and you'll be able to hear it. So thank you all. Good day.
Thank you. Thank you to your audience as well.
All right. Good day, Dr. Jarvis. Good day, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things with your host, Lyndia Grant.
We hold these truths to be self-evident.